Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Bushido Risen Sun, the new edition of Bushido from GCT Studios, and its 2-player starter set. Now, I started playing Bushido, probably 3 or 4 years ago, with the Ito clan, and then I branched into some ninjas, the Kage Zoku, and then I was playing the cult of Yurei, and a bunch of other friends of us played a bunch of games. But there wasn't a starter set outside of the single-player starter sets. It was kind of a traditional indie game format where you'd buy a 1-player starter and a rule book and then be off to the races. They've actually released a 2-player starter set with enough for 2 people to just jump right in and play the game, focusing on, again, the Ito clan, which is the snake-worshipping samurais, and the prefecture of Ryu, so sort of just like the establishment government prefecture, sort of good guy samurais. And you get enough for 2 people to play right out of the box. You get about 50 rice-ish, 40 and change, plus all your enhancements and events and stuff. Where the game size, it has become a little more granular. The game size has jumped to about 100 as the standard game size rice, where you're going to play a game where you're probably about 5 to 6 models a side. So this is probably about half of what you would have. If, in some exceptions, some of the Savage Wave could have like tons of goblins and stuff like that. And the Cult of Yurei could have a lot of zombies and stuff too. But for the most part, you're looking at this being about a half-size army, so a good intro-size game, and all brand new miniatures. Now, you don't really get it from just looking at the outside of the box, but you get a ton of stuff in this box set. If you have existing miniatures for the new edition, they are doing card packs. So for instance, here's my card pack for my KKZ, my ninjas, which gives you profiles for all of the existing folks. So you can see Rin, Kue, Karasu, Katsumi, Ghost, and then Waimu and Ujimushi, the 2 junior assassins, all have profiles in here, and then all of your new stuff for your decoys and ninja stars and caltrops and all the things ninjas like to use. So a lot like Malifaux, if you were looking at just grabbing the rulebook and upgrading your current stat cards, they've done the same thing where they've just done a one-shot buy pack for getting all of your current edition cards for whatever factions that you play. Now, let's look at what's in the box, because I was actually really surprised when I opened this, just how much came in here. They have done, whoa, look at this, tokens. Now, this is probably the thing I was most excited about. So miniatures, tokens, and an A5 scale rulebook for Risen Sun. What a great pile of swag to play with. So first of all, the miniatures, I just opened up the ball pack earlier and checked to see all the pieces in here. Wonderful hard metal, white metal miniatures in the same vein as the previous ones. You get your Bushido Risen Sun rulebook, which we'll look at in a minute. But let's focus on these accessories. So all your cards, and now again, I said these are brand new profiles. So all the characters in here did not previously exist and are new basically for the factions they represent, which is awesome because you're not getting something you already have. It's not a resculpt of an existing miniature. You're getting a new profile by buying the box, which means it has value to existing players too. So Idukinu, she's a Shisei, one of the snake priestesses, and then Ishii and Ashigaru, and Isis a heavy. So even if you played, there's basically 2 main themes in the Ito clan. You can play as the Lords of Izu, who are it's like the samurai faction of just like more the human guys, or you can play as the blessed, the anointed, or whatever it is, the Cult of Yurei guy, not the Cult of Yurei, the Cult of the Snake people, where you've got like Hebbies and Shisei and anybody with the blood of Orochi who can play in there for you too. So these are really neat. You get all your upgrades and stuff as well to get you to 50. And then you get your new prefecture stuff. So Takashi Akira, Hiromasa, Ima, and then the Dragon's Vigor, all your prefecture training and equipment cards for these guys as well. So you get a samurai and 2 Ashigarus to face down the evil snake lady and her assassiny snake man. And then finally, you do get tokens. I remember this is one of the struggles we had when we were playing the game originally. You get some really nice, I'm just gonna open them up here for you to see, like super thick, hard card tokens. So you get your Tired and Exhausted status tokens. This is a game where you basically go through activations, you alternate activating with your opponent, and a first activation will make you tired, including if you get charged and you fight back against somebody, it will make you tired, and your second action each turn makes you exhausted, and you reset each round. So skills can be long and short, like to charge someone will exhaust you, or you could move up and wait to be attacked, or attack back, and then you're just becoming tired during a move. All of your statuses, so like being held, blind, disguised, ammo, reload. I did notice a printing thing They printed disguised backwards, which is kind of neat. So the word disguise got printed backwards somehow. I think maybe it got flipped and they're trying to do the reverse of the card, because Spirit Block is also reversed on this side, which I thought was funny. But Tired and Exhausted is fine. Things like bleeding, being on fire, being poisoned. These are your key tokens, and then having an ammo token if you need to reload and stuff like that. And I'm not sure what this token's for yet. I'll have to look it up. It's the only one I couldn't figure out just by looking at them. But you get 3 sets of these, so more than enough. You're gonna have 12 Tired Exhausted tokens, tons of Disguised and Held tokens, like more than enough to actually like play the game with. And you'll have a good collection for having a friend over to play too. So like it's more than enough for 2 people to actually play with. The one thing it didn't come with, which I was surprised by, is D6s, because you do use D6s to do everything in this game. It doesn't come with dice. The assumption is you have some D6s, I guess. So that's from just like the amount of stuff. I was actually really surprised by how much I got, but then I was also surprised by the fact that we didn't get the one thing that you would think you would just include, which is dice. So yeah, so this is exactly the same as the large scale format rulebook 2. It's gonna get you all the core rules, and then it's gonna get you all your gameplay stuff. Now, the one thing I will say just before I start overviewing this for people who haven't played, is this is a much more concise rulebook than the previous rulebook, and it definitely pulls back the amount of like token tracking and keywords and stuff. It makes the game a little bit less I guess like status intensive, where you're trying to track like a million things at the same time, and all the things you do track have a token on this sheet, which is really nice. Makes it a lot more digestible. And then the rules presentation and layout is again really, really presentable. It's a little less written. The previous one was kind of written project planny, where you have like section 1, section 1.1, section 1.2. And from a writing and like production standpoint, that really works, but it does make the game kind of hard to digest. This one is written in a much more, I think, just, I guess, new person friendly format. So getting ready for Game Bushido, you're gonna need to copy these rules, a set of Bushido miniatures and their cards, a tape measure or measuring widget, some 10 6-sided dice in 2 different colors, 5 in one color, 5 in the other. Several coins, chips, or dice to track the model's key tokens during play. Some people like to use 10-sided dice for this. To protect your cards, you want to put them in card sleeves for dry weight markers. 2 foot by 2 foot play area, several bits of terrain. No single piece should be bigger than 9 by 9. And then optionally, special attack and defense cards for reference, and a Bushido token set to help track in-game status and effects. So the special attack and defense cards are actually used when you're doing special, what sounds like special attacks. You can bid in blind what you're gonna do and then reveal it to your opponent. So it's like, it's almost like a fencing mechanic where like you try and do a special move and you hold it off. So terms and concepts, again, wonderfully in color this time too, and I would say the diagrams are actually really upgraded from the previous edition as well. Activating a model, base to base, battlefield, controller, counters, cover, dice rolls, the usual stuff. And then line of sight, modifiers, movement, your size, targeting. Size is important, actually. I should mention size, because it is a lot of things like shooting will depend on your size. There's modifiers to hit and not hit when you're big or small. So your base size typically dictates what your actual size is, although there are exceptions to this where something could be small but be on a large base just because of the nature of miniatures. It could be like on a scenic base or something. Typically, unless it has a trait, small bases 30 are going to be small, medium bases 40 are going to be medium, large bases 50 are going to be large, and then huge are going to be on 60s, and they have the huge sizing. Zone of control. So this is an interesting thing. You have a 1-inch zone of control all the way around you. A lot of effects and time and walking around and abilities and stuff dictated by your zone of control. So you do have sort of an aura around you that you can't move into unless you're friendly to the person on the table. Your cards, okay, so profile cards. So you've got some different things on here. So first, your name, who you are. Typically, you are unique in this game unless you are sort of like a scrub, like an Ashigaru or someone like that, someone who's, or some of the Savage Wave. They'll have a generic card, and if that's the case, their point value will say each usually instead of a point value. So you're usually recruiting one of someone in your army, unless the point value up top here says each. And then elemental icons. Some models are aspected towards an element. So you've got earth, fire, air, metal, water, or void. Your base size, your type, so your keywords for type, that can be very important for building and equipping enhancements. So for instance, the Lords of Izu for the Edo clan can only take samurais and ashigaru. They can't take any of the hebi and stuff like that. They don't like the snake men. They're prideful humans. And so your keyword samurai would be important. And there's actually one of my models who's a keyword samurai and hebi, which means even though he has the samurai keyword, you can't use him because he's basically snake from the waist down. He's a samurai that's pot snake. Statistics, so you get your stats. You get your melee pool, so this is the number of dice the model uses when resolving an opposed melee attack. So for instance over here, this monk is melee 4. Then you've got your range pool, which is the little bow and arrow. This is the number of dice used to resolve a ranged attack. Your move statistic, the distance the model can move in inches when it makes a specific movement. That's your little foot over there, so this guy can move 4 inches per movement. And then key statistics, so if you've got a key feature or an ability, it'll be right here. It's a little symbol-y thing. It's 2 stats. The 2 numbers are written X, Y. The first is your key statistic. This tells you how many key tokens you generate. The second is how many you can hold. So you generate 2 per turn, you can hold 8 for Edo here. Sorry, for a Kinu Edo. And then your wounds track, which is at the bottom there, so that little like necklace, she has 5 wounds she can take before she dies. Your traits, so your traits are over here. They're typically things you can't change about yourself. So she's a snake, and she's got poison 1/1. And then you've also got your melee and range weapon grid. Sorry, the melee weapon actually, is her snake, and it's poison 1/1 with a -1 melee die. So she only runs 1 melee die when she fights. And then sorcery, she can shoot you with sorcery, and it's shoot +1. So she gets 3 shooting dice and 2 force 6 damage. And then her traits down here are she's aware, she has the blood of Orochi, and she's immunity to poison. So she's high on the snake venom. And then finally you've got your down here, which is your other key abilities, things you can do, your unique effects and stuff. And your feats. And on the back you've got all your extra bits. So like the description for contagious poison and her unique effects, things that are only hers. And then these ones in blue down here, this is the definition for all of her rules in this box right here, her traits. So it just defines what aware means. So aware means this model's line of sight's 360. Blood of Orochi, during the key generation step, each of this model may add a Blood of Orochi token to the token pool. See the rule book on how to spend them. So they basically spend poison tokens for using different snake effects and stuff. And she's immune to poison. And then she has a unique skill, which is her melee pool cannot be reduced by states. So if there's a state like she's frozen or, like petrified or something like that, because it's the snake fighting, her melee pool never goes down, which is cool. And then down here are her feats. And feats have a whole rubric for describing them. So like all of these symbols basically define what the effect is. Event cards are things you can buy. Enhancement cards, who they can be bought for. Terrain cards, because you can actually buy terrain on the table. Like the Savage Wave can buy like a little gremlin hole for them all crawl out of. And then your theme lists. And the theme lists were what I was talking about earlier, where you have a restriction, but you get some bonuses too. So this one is actually a KKZ one, where they have an assassination mission. They get different bonuses, but they can only take models with the Ninja, Ronin Ninja, or Carapan keywords. They can't take anybody else. And then into the rules. So when rules conflict. If one rule, Rule A, references another rule, Rule B by name, then Rule A takes priority. Rules that prevent something happening take priority over rules that force something to happen. If this does not resolve the conflict, then move to step 3. If effects happen at the same time, the active player chooses the order in which to resolve them. It's nice. Warband composition. So 70 for an intro game or a quick game, 100 rice for standard games. Ronin, so some models have the Ronin keyword. They're not considered part of your faction warbands, and just join your army based on their own keywords. And the game step. So, game setup and turn. First, each player should create a warband. Then, agree on or randomly generate a scenario. Players deploy and nominate any scenario objectives. And then players deploy terrain. And then select deployment zones. When deploying terrain elements, this should follow the following 3 steps. Players should make the deployment tactical test, and winner decides which player is player 1. Player 1 then sets up a terrain element. Players alternate in choosing at least 6 terrain elements. The players who choose to stop placing terrain then chooses one of the deployment zones dictated by the scenario. No impassable terrain element may be deployed within a scenario or deployment zone, and no impassable terrain element can be deployed within 2 inches of a scenario objective or other terrain element with the impassable trait. The winner of the deployment tactical test deploys terrain that is part of the warband first, and then players simultaneously declare records on any very important models, see scenario. Player 1 then decides which player deploys first. That player deploys their entire force, and the second player then deploys, and then first turn begins. So table setup's pretty similar to Malifaux or any of your typical skirmish games where you're doing your deployment stuff for the mission, and then you're doing the terrain deployment, and then you're doing your own terrain, and then you're doing your forces. Game turn. Roll to see if there's a variable game turn. Key generation, you get all your key counters. Each model gains 2 activation counters each. The tactical test, resolve the tactical test to see which player is active, so basically you're dicing off. Resolve any effects which happen in the starting phase. Players calculate the number of pass tokens this turn. Each player totals the number of models in their warband, and the difference is the number of pass tokens somebody gets. So because this is very much an activation control game, you do gain pass tokens based on the difference in models, because that actually gives you potentially half as many activations as you could have. Because each model could go twice if they just do short and then short again. They become tired, exhausted. Getting a pass token gives you 1 chance of not going. Although people tend to burn through actions quickly if they run or if they do things like fight, get attacked. The main phase, starting with the player chosen to go via the tactical roll, the player becomes active, and then the active player may use any active feats. The player chooses a model from their warband and declares a simpler complex action. Alternatively, the player may spend a pass token. Model's action is resolved. The active player then uses active feats in the last time in this activation. The opponent then becomes the active player and goes to step 1. Once neither player can activate a model, move to the end phase. And then the end phase, resolve any effects that occur in the end phase, resolve damage, so like fire, bleeding, poison. Effects that expire now expire. Check the scenario to see if somebody's won, and then discard any unused pass tokens, and that's it. So moving around, pretty simple. They can move actions. Your basic movement would be a walk. Actions, you can have conditions. Each model gains 2 activation counters. Standard actions, a melee action, a disengage action, a simple key feed action. Range attacks, runs. So now the model can move 1.5. Simple scenario action. Models based with scenario items. Stand up, wait, walk action. Now if they wait, they get to do some cool things though. Instead, it may choose one of the following effects triggered by the wait action. Remove all stun markers, remove all mobilize markers, remove the 2 fire markers, remove a reload marker. An effect triggered by a wait action specific to the model's card, or remove a piece of destructible terrain with the activating model in base to base by spending 2 key. So wait's actually become really handy because wait has encompassed a lot of previous actions where like you would do things like remove conditions and stuff like that. Wait is now the, I guess, default action for doing all of that stuff that doesn't necessarily need its own action. Wait is like, I'm standing around doing something else, I'm not taking part in your game right now. And then walking. Complex actions, the activating model may make a charge. Complex key feed will be dictated by whether or not it's complex or not. And some key feats can be combined with a walk. A focus action, complex scenario action. And then making tests. To see whether a model is actually successful and how successful, they require a test. There's 2 types of tests in Bushido, opposed and a challenge. Both tests involve rolling d6s. The opposed tests pit the players against each other, while a challenge test is against a challenge number. So there's like basically target number tests, and then you and your opponent both trying to roll higher than each other tests. If naturally or because of a negative modifier, model statistic value is 0 for an opposed challenge test, the player rolls a single die. In opposed tests, both players gain a die in their pool until both players have at least 1 die. Remember that 2 statistics represent a model's key, the key stat and the maximum key stat. When conducting tests relying only on the key statistic, the maximum key is not relevant. So you're not using here like 8. You're not rolling 8 dice for a key test. And then conducting rerolls. If dice must be rerolled, then rerolls should be conducted in the following order, with model A being the person with initiative or the activating model, and model B being the opponent. So the opponent always does their rerolls first. The model B picks any of the model A's dice. These dice are then re-rolled. Model B then picks any of their own dice and does the re-rolls. Model A then picks any of Model B dice. So basically, Model A has the advantage on B because B has to conduct their re-rolls first. Because there's effects in the game that can force you to re-roll, allow you to roll your own dice or force your opponent to re-roll dice. Those have to go off if you are not the active model before your opponent's goes off. Then opposed test, the models calculate their dice pools, determine whether or not they're going to use any abilities, key feats, or whatever to increase them, or use a key boost. Both players then roll their dice and conduct any rerolls. Both players remove any dice with a value of 1. Those are dead dice. The models apply any modifiers necessary to their highest die results, whatever the highest die you rolled was. Next, up to 2 additional dice that were not removed contribute +1 to the final result. These are called supporting dice. The final results are then compared, the successful model being the one with the highest final result. If one model is successful and the other is not, the difference between them is the success level of the test. In the case of final results being ties, these following tiebreakers are used. The player who rolled the highest number of dice wins, or the active player wins. So basically, you're rolling whatever your pool is, trying to find your highest result. Discard all your ones. Any of the results that weren't ones, up to 2 more, can add to the high result. So like, if I rolled 3, 4, 5, 5 is my high dice, 3 and 4 are supporting dice, and my 5 becomes a 7. My overall score is a 7. My opponent might have rolled 6, 2, 1. The 1 is not a success and is just removed. The 2 becomes a supporting dice and makes their 6 a 7 as well. And we've tied. So let's say I was the active player. That would then break the tie potentially. We both rolled the same number of dice, so that wouldn't break the tie. And that of testing is used for everything. That's used for shooting attacks, melee attacks, whatever. And if it's opposed or unopposed. So an unopposed test would be you're looking to get to a target number. So let's say you're shooting at somebody with a gun, and there's a size challenge test. It could be that someone's huge, or small, or large, or whatever. It'll give you the target number you need to hit the target based on their size, and that's the number you're trying to reach with your roll. And these are challenge tests. A size challenge test is a challenge test using a model's size in place of a statistic. A model taking a size challenge test rolls a number of dice equal to their size. So size challenge tests are usually things like feats of strength. You want to like break something open or pick something up. So a huge model would roll 5 dice to make that chest. And then you have traits like strong, weak, or swarm. You'll get bonuses too. So if you're strong and tiny, you'd still roll 2 dice. You could be Mighty Mouse. But if you're huge and weak, you might roll 4 dice instead of 5. And then, what's the tactical test? Tactical tests occur at the beginning. Both players nominate a model to perform an opposed test using a single d6, applying modifiers for tactician or scout. The player who succeeds decides who the player will be active for the first turn. Yeah, it's just a d6 roll, but those traits would come into apply, tactician or whatever. And then range attacks. So base number of the challenge is dependent on your range. So you're going to have short, medium, and long range. And then you'll have different bonuses. So like, let's say you need a 6 to hit if it's long range, and if they're tiny, it becomes a 7, but if they're huge, it would become a 3. And that's you're rolling your range attack and then trying to hit that target number, basically. So there's still some math involved for finding target numbers and stuff, but once you've done it a few times, and actually I think my cards came with a handy quick graph. Let me see if I can find it real fast here. Yeah, here it is. This wasn't in here though. There was no quick graph in here, and I think this would have been a good one to include in this box set as well. And that's your melee success level, so that's how much you beat your opponent by, how much damage you would do. And then this one is an exact reprinting actually of the shooting one that's in the book. Descriptions of the order of activation for shooting, and then melee exchanges. Same thing, it's an opposed melee attack with each other. Skills can come into play, and then after you've done that, you're going to see how much success and damage you did. So Aya has a total of 6 for her attack, and Chio a 5 in defense. Aya gets a success level of 1. Chio has a total of 5 in attack and 4 in defense. She also gets a success level of 1 in the damage roll. So when you attack and defend, you actually could hurt each other. Right, so melee exchanges are interesting because they don't, you actually secretly take your melee pool and break it into dice you're attacking with and dice you're defending with, and the 2 pools are compared against each other. So you can go all into attack and just take lumps from your opponent as long as they put at least 1 dice into attack, or they could go all into defense, all into attack. Typically you spread your dice out to hope that you get a nice high spike in damage, but you still block enough that you don't take a lot of damage in return. Because melee is dangerous, and both sides fight at the same time, basically. So it's a bit like Confrontation, where you would allocate to attack and defense, reveal and roll simultaneously, and then potentially both take damage. And the chart here will dictate how much damage you're going to take. So if your success level was 2, and then you would compare it to whatever your damage roll is afterwards. So your damage roll becomes where is it? A d6 with a bunch of modifiers, typically. Where is it? That's a success level, and then you roll a d6, that's right. Where is it? Melee pool, melee assist, wound table. The success level indicates the column in the wound table you roll, and then you roll 2d6, adding together the results with any positive or negative modifiers. So like you're strong, there's skills that can add to this roll. So I beat your total defense score by 2. I'd roll 2d6 in this table. I'd max it at 5 damage on a 12. But if I roll a 2 or 3, I do no damage at all. So it's even possible to just get slightly hit and still take no damage when you get hit. And the same would go for shooting. So like, let's say I had a target number of 7 and I beat it by 1 or 2. I'd be rolling, let's say I had a target number of 3 and I rolled a 7. I'm beating it by 4, then I could potentially do between 1 and 7 points of damage to you and just like kill you outright. Special abilities, all the various many traits. And there are lots of special abilities and special attacks. Things like doing a combo attack, push attack, sidestep attack, and this is what the cards usually get used for. And what happens when you do a special attack after you roll your dice, you'd resolve its effect, and it could be that you like negate certain amounts of hits or force you to reroll dice or whatever it is. And there's usually a plus and a minus for the attacks. There's no attack that's just like automatically good that you would just do every time. And all your states, so Berserk, Bleed, Blind, Controlled, Disguised, Death Sentenced, Diseased, Held, Frightened, Immobilized, On Fire, Poison, and again, all of your counters are going to be here. Prone, Stunned, all your key feats, and this is the rubric for what they do and how they work. So not in base to base, and you can't move when you do it. So if you don't have that, like, so for instance, this one, the Contagious Poison cannot be done base to base. And then it could also be once per turn or once per game if it has that tag. This one doesn't. Instant, active, simple, or complex. So hers is a C, which means it's complex. And then it is TA, it's target, so it targets someone within X, and it's within 6 inches. So her key feat is costs 4 key to do. It's complex, so it's a long skill. It's going to exhaust her. It's targeting someone 6 inches away, and it's an opposed key test. So feats with this icon require an opposed key test with the target. If the test is successful, the feat becomes active. And then Contagious Poison will cause performing an opposed key test. They gain Poison 2 marker and a stun marker. Choose another enemy within 3 inches of the target and immediately repeat this, ignoring range, line of sight, and camouflage. So basically you bounce a key test onto somebody else after you succeed with that one, which is pretty cool. And then traits, things like Surprised, all your different traits you could have. So all the different things. The Bear Stands Alone, Believer, Bleed, and there's tons of these still. But what's nice is the traits are being printed on the back here. I don't know if that's true with my other cards. The starter set ones, yeah, the starter set ones did it on the back. They did not print, so for like Kenzo Ito here, they did not reprint his traits on the back. I would have liked to see that, because the more of the information you have to look up in this book is on the cards. That would have been extremely handy. Tiny, Rise, Terrain, so all the rules for terrain. And then all rules for deployment, and then we're into scenarios. So baseline deployment along the edges, on either sides. Corner square deployment, 6-inch squares in the corner. And these are all 24-inch boards. And then your different scenarios. So key, secu, idols, 3 in the book. And then some background stuff like the Ito clan, the prefecture, the Savage Wave, Temple of Rokan, the Jung Pirates, the Dissension of the Tengu, the Silver Moon Trade Syndicate, which is like the mob, the Ronin, the Minimoto, and the Kage Kazezoku, I know I got it backwards, and the Shiho clan, which is the new clan that's showing up for the new edition, and the Imperial Court. And that's it. So a great starter set, a few minor quibbles. I would have liked, like, what they did great for the starter set, I would have liked to have seen repeated in the main card packs. And then of course the printing errors where these are just, they've been put in backwards. But other than that, what a perfect start to playing Bushido, because you're gonna get everything you need to actually play a game for the first time. And yeah, the last thing was dice. Just throw a handful of D6s in there. Get some little tiny D6s and play that. Although obviously lots of people have D6s, so it's super minor. But a good first shot at a 2-player starter set for Bushido, and definitely a way for retailers and stockists to have this on their shelves. And have one product basically that anyone could buy to play the game, along with, like, later on you can have the associated starter sets for the other stuff too. And there's lots of new starter sets coming too. So good job GCT Studios. If you're excited to give Bushido a try and you haven't tried it before, highly recommend this box as your first step. Other than that, you can also get a larger scale version of this same rulebook separately, all the card packs separately too for any existing products that you find or already own. And then there's lots of new stuff coming. So we'll see you for another GMG review in the future. Till next time, I'm Ash. Now bring it. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to support the channel, of course, like and subscribe and hit the little bell below to get notifications when I post future content. I do post stuff 7 days a week. If you want to support the channel further, you can, of course, buy a t-shirt through Spreadshirts, buy a measuring gauge or objective markers from Death Ray Designs, or, of course, most importantly, there is Patreon. Patreon is what makes all this possible, keeps the lights on, pays for the studio costs, pays for the equipment, model costs, and everything else, and most importantly, puts food in my kids' bellies and a roof over their heads. Big thanks to everyone, past, future, who supported me. I do this stuff because of you guys, and of course, I will continue doing it as long as I can.